Hello there, and welcome to the Time Machine with Trish and Mike. I'm Mike.
And I'm Trish.
And we're glad you're with us once again on this wonderful 3-day weekend, Memorial Day weekend that we have coming up in America. Of course, in Canada, you do not have Memorial Day weekend because you just had Victoria Day weekend last weekend.
That is true. So we just came off a 3-day weekend, and now I'm very envious that you guys are going on to a 3-day weekend.
Well, at least here in a couple of weeks, you'll have a lot of 3-day weekends. In fact, you'll have 7-day weekends because you are almost DONE with the school year.
Oh, thank goodness. Yep. Our last teaching day is June 18th, and I can't wait.
Now, is that the last? So that's the last teaching day. Then do you still have like a few days kind of post planning or something to do, or?
Yeah. So that's our last teaching day. Well, and normally our high school students would be writing exams. And because I work at a school that has a lot of students with learning disabilities, so they have dyslexia or dysgraphia or different things like that, we need all teachers on deck for scribing. So we finish early with our younger kids in order to do finals and have teachers scribe and read for our older students.
So the younger students finish the year before the high school students?
At our school, yeah. It's not normally like that for other Albertan schools, but because we're a special private school, we're able to do that.
So do like the regular Alberta schools, are they do they end at the same day? Like the high school, the middle school, the elementary, everybody would get out typically on the same
day.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Because that's how it is here in Florida. Like, all the public school, the schools are ran at a county level.
Right.
So all the schools get out the same day. Private schools are on a slightly different calendar because they can do that. The only thing like we got to do as seniors, when you're a senior in high school, we wind up getting out like a week to a week and a half early, sometimes 2 weeks, just kind of depending on the way the schedule works.
Well, it all depends on when you have your finals, right? And our finals for high school are, we have diploma exams. So the government writes the test and mandates the test. Now, of course, with COVID, it's deemed optional. So our grade 12 students can choose to write it or not write it.
Gotcha.
So it's interesting who's deciding to write it, who's deciding not to.
Yeah, like our graduation was on May 20th, and our last day was like May 8th or 9th, somewhere around there. But
well, and you finished earlier in the States too.
Yeah, we also start earlier. Yeah. So like at that point, now the calendar is slightly different now, but at the time when I was in school, we would start like second week of August. So like August 9th, 10th, 11th, whatever that Monday would have been.
Well, and we watch in junior high, we do current events every day. So we've been watching CNN 10, which has taught me a lot about the American system and American politics and all that kind of jazz and the American perspective and worldview. And the host of CNN 10 was like, oh yeah, we only have like 7 more shows left before we break for summer. And my kids are like, but we still have so much more school. Why are they done so early? And I was like, oh, in the United States, they're usually done the second week of June. And they're like, what? Or the second week of June, right?
Mm-hmm.
And they're like, what? I'm like, yeah, sorry, guys. I mean, we're done the second week of June as well, or third week this year. Usually we're done a bit earlier, but with COVID, we're making up hours.
Right.
And I was like, you're lucky. You could be like other Albertan schools and keep going. But I said they do have to go back to school in August. So they didn't like that. They were like, okay, no, we'll take September start.
Yeah, and there's different states or different calendars as well. Like I know in like New York, they don't really start till close to, if not after Labor Day. So they're more like late August or early September, but they also will not end until first or second week of June. So
well, do you think that it's more your weather? Like it just gets so hot and nice that like even for us here in Alberta, we do have nice summers and it gets nice and warm and sunny and the kids are just stir crazy and don't really want to be in the classroom.
It could be. I have no idea, but I do know that you have a story to get us going today.
I do have a story. This is actually a really famous story in Canada. And so I'm curious, they do talk about it being an international kind of craze. So maybe you've heard of it, maybe you haven't. But May 28th, 1934, the Dion Quintuplets are going to be born, and they are going to be 5 identical baby girls named Yvonne, Annette, Cecilia, Emily, and Marie. So I don't know if you've heard of this before.
It does not sound familiar.
No? Okay,
Mm-mm.
that's actually really interesting because most Canadians, at least my generation and older, I think would know the story quite well because these children are going to be very unique. They're actually considered the only naturally conceived quintuplets that have survived beyond birth and into adulthood in the world that we know of. There's no other record of naturally occurring quints, identical quints. They're going to be born near the village of Corbell in northern Ontario. They're going to arrive 2 months early, which, isn't actually that bad considering it's a multiple birth. Together, you want to know how much all 5 babiys weigh together, Mike? Now a math question for you.
Yeah, well, and
the table is turned.
I'm gonna one up you here. About 3 kilograms, maybe.
What's a kilogram? You have to do it in pounds, man. This is where Canada gets weird.
I tried to convert for you. I'm gonna say like maybe a little over a pound and a half, maybe.
All 5 together?
Yeah, I don't know how small. Well, they had to have been preemies, so they couldn't have been.
They're 2 months. Yeah, preemies, 2 months old.
Yeah.
5 babies together. What's the total weight?
Oh, total weight. Okay, so
not just per baby.
Oh, okay. Total weight. I'm gonna guess 8-9 pounds.
You were pretty close. 13, so 5 kilograms. I had to Google that quickly.
Okay. So they were roughly 2 point something ish each. So okay.
Yeah. They're 13 pounds, 6 ounces. The largest is going to weigh 2.5 pounds, and the smallest is going to weigh 1 pound, 8.5 ounces. And none of them are going to be longer than 9 inches, which is so teeny tiny. Because I think to my girls when they were born, and my oldest was like a chunky monkey at almost 10 pounds and 21 inches long.
Yeah.
So these babies are super tiny.
Yeah. Well, I'm looking at my computer screen here and thinking this is way bigger than that. So.
Yep. These little teeny tiny babies. So they're going to be born, they're going to be delivered and taken care of all without any medical equipment or facilities. It's basically 2 midwives and a rural doctor who's named Dr. Alan Defoe. And the delivery and survival is considered miraculous in the medical community, considering they had nothing. And Defoe is going to get really creative in order to take care of the babies. He's going to create a milk mixture with corn syrup to try and get them to bulk up. He uses bricks wrapped in towels to keep them warm, like they're heated in the fire and they're going to be kept warm that way.
Okay, so like a hot stone kind of a thing.
Yeah.
Okay. Because when you were first saying bricks, I'm like, bricks of what? And then I realized where you were going with that. Okay.
Oh yeah, like an actual brick from a house.
Yeah. Okay.
They're going to put that in the fire, warm it up, and wrap it in a towel. And they had hot water bottles.
Okay, so they're getting a spa day.
Yeah, these poor little babies.
Yeah.
Now, the odds of naturally occurring quintuplets. What do you guess are the odds of it occurring naturally?
Well, I'm gonna say 1 in a quintillion.
Ooh, 1 in 57 million are the odds, but identical, it's actually considered incalculable because of the random nature of twinning. So there's no actual statistic on the natural occurrence of 5 identical babies.
Because the odds of it are so slim because these are the only examples.
These are the only ones that we know.
Right.
Yeah. There might be, there could be another human history, but we haven't discovered any.
Nothing in recorded history that we're aware of.
Yeah. Now, what's interesting is, of course, this is back in the 1930s. So there's, limited access to birth control and being able to limit the size of your family at this time. And the girl's parents already had 5 children before these quintuplets. So you go instantly double your family overnight, right?
Yeah. I've had friends that are like, oh, we're going to have one more kid. And then that's when they have, twins or whatever.
Yeah.
So it's like, wait, no. I signed up for one more. I didn't sign up for this.
Well, and even now when you have 2, like I have my 2 little girls and people are like, after or when I was expecting Julia, they're like, okay, so like you're going to be done, like you're going to, prevent anymore. And I'm like, I'm still real young and I only got 2. Like 2 does not seem like a lot nowadays, but 10 overnight, that's a lot of babies. Yeah. And they're going to go on and have 3 more after the quints show up. If I was that wife, I'd be like, you're sleeping out in the barn. Like, get away from me, man.
You got to go to Quebec, and that's when Quebec can annex itself from
It can
Canada,
annex
and then
itself.
stay
Yeah.
away from me.
And because of already having 5 children and then having 5 more and having 5 that are quite high needs, of course, getting them to survive past just
Sure.
infancy.
Especially for back then.
Yeah, the 1930s, like,
Oh, yeah.
and there's not a lot of wealth. It's in the Depression. You know, things are very difficult. The parents are actually going to go to the government for help, and the children are going to become wards of the state. And Dr. Alan Defoe is going to become one of their 3 primary guardians. They're going to, across the street from their home, they're going to build what's known as the Defoe Hospital and Nursery. And it's actually like a huge compound. There's room for staff and the nurses. There's actually RCMP officers that are sent to live on the compound to protect the children.
Royal Mounted Canadian Police for our American friends.
That's right. And they're going to have a schoolroom. They're going to have the kitchen facilities, the whole shebang, right?
Mm-hmm.
And they're going to be moved from their farmhouse to this nursery on September 21st. So they're 4 months old when they go and move into this compound. There's an outdoor playground. There's actually a public observation area. If you can see where I might be going with this.
They're like animals in a zoo.
They're animals in a zoo. They basically make a zoo, and they charge people admission to come and watch the quints play in the playground and have their snack together and learn in their schoolroom.
Tell me this is going for like their college fund or their medical care or something.
Well, a good chunk of it did end up going to the Ontario government. And of course, it did trickle down into the family. It really did turn into an overnight sensation. People were absolutely intrigued by these little girls. And during the Great Depression, there wasn't a whole lot going on, and there wasn't a whole lot of hope, right? So these little girls kind of symbolized this hope and uniqueness and something to look forward to. The facility is going to be funded by a Red Cross fundraiser. It's going to have a covered arcade and one-way screens so that people who pay admission can, of course, go and watch them. And
so that way the kids don't feel like they're the animals in the zoo. Yeah. They don't know that people are watching them.
The little girls have no idea. And to keep them straight so that everyone knew who was who.
Wrong.
Not only did people would come and watch them at a zoo, they then would lease out their images for advertising for things like Quaker Oats.
Oh, there's
stuff like that.
There is no way you could do this today. You could not make a zoo out of kids.
It would be so ethically immoral. But keep these kids straight on the posters too, right? So people would start having their favorite quint, and it was known as quint. Became known as Quintland, right? So you would go to Disney. It was very strange. They sold souvenirs, but so the girls had a color and a symbol to mark whoever belonged to who. So Annette's color was red, and she had a maple leaf, very Canadian. Cecile was green and had a turkey. Emily was white and a tulip. Marie would wear blue and had a teddy bear, and Yvonne was pink with a bluebird. So you could be like, oh, I love, Yvonne's my favorite in the pink.
Did they have them I don't know, see who could stack Legos faster than another one and place bets on them? I mean, we get in some gambling action with this or what?
Not that I know of, but I mean, I would put it past people that are coming to watch children basically at a human zoo.
That's what I'm saying.
3,000 people per day would visit this observation gallery that surrounded the outdoor playground to view these Dion sisters. 3,000 people a day thought, this is a great outing. I'm going to pack a picnic. I'm going to drive up to this small town in Ontario, and I'm going to watch these little girls play. Oh, weird.
This is absurd. I can't believe this.
It's so weird. So they estimate that over 300,000 people would walk through the gallery between 1936 and 1943.
Do we know what they charged? Wait, so they were watching them up till they were 7 or 8 years old?
They were 9 years old. They would watch them for 9 years.
Did they go to school?
They had a school in the compound, yeah. And the girls would actually continue to use that school. They would every year kind of update it until it was actually post-secondary. They attended university there with 10 local children who were handpicked to go to school with them. It's so weird. These poor little girls. They estimate that the Quints brought in $50 million in total tourism revenue to Ontario. And it was Ontario's biggest tourist attraction of that time, surpassing the Canadian side of Niagara Falls.
Okay, again.
So more people went to Quintland than they went to Niagara Falls.
Again.
Or money-wise.
these girls and their eventual descendants should be getting a cut of this. Like, this is absurd.
Oh, you wait and see, my friend. So
Okay.
eventually the father is going to want to have the family restored. And he lobbies the government to have his family, when the girls are 9, move into the compound with them. And they kind of stop the touristy side. But the dad still would, lease out them to shows and advertising, and they were in movies. So he's still making money off of them. And the girls actually claim, what's really, really sad, is that once the family moved into the compound with them, it was the saddest years of their life, that there was verbal abuse, and they didn't realize that the parents were basically taking all their money. They had no idea that the house and fancy cars and everything that they had was earned off of their appearances.
Yeah. And you hear about this from time to time with like child actors and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Not so much nowadays, because I think there's a lot more regulations and stuff, but yeah.
Yes. Well, and so it's no surprise by the time they turn 18, they are like out of there. By 1952, they then had very little contact with their parents and other siblings after they turned 18. So once they're legal adults, they go off, they get married. One goes into the nunnery to become a sister, and which is sad because at 20 years old, she ends up passing away. She was prone to seizures and passed away at the convent. So there's 2 that are currently living. We have Annette and Cecile are still alive. They have not passed away.
So they're going to be like 91 this week.
Mm-hmm. So happy birthday to them.
Good. Maybe they're listening.
And in 1998, they actually reached a settlement with the Ontario government over compensation for their exploitation. And they earn how much?
Probably nothing near what they should have.
No, I don't think you can put a price tag on like being a zoo animal.
Yeah. 5 million Canadian per child.
You would be generous. They only earn a total among the 5. I mean, it went to the
surviving living ones, I'm guessing.
Yeah, it went to the remaining. There was 3 sisters at the time of the settlement, and now 2. So they got 2.8 million total.
That's nothing.
I mean, you can't put a price tag on your whole world.
The Ontario government could have.
They could have put a number on it, but they did not.
Plus interest? Are you kidding me? Like these quintuplets, great grandkids don't have to work for the amount of money that they should have been getting.
Considering they brought in 50 million for the government, and all they get back is 2.8.
Right. You bring in 50 million for the government, and you add 70 years worth of interest to that.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's messed up.
It's messed up. But there's lots of movies made about them. There's books written about them. You can still find some of the souvenir memorabilia that's worth quite a bit of money.
Of which they got 0.
Which they got 0 because it was just, taken without permission, basically. But yeah, there was shops lined up all around the compound that would sell, souvenir plates with their image on it, or posters, and like I said, they were advertised on Quaker Oats and other local products. So
not cool. I mean, it's a very interesting
really
story,
wild.
But geez.
Like you said, it would never be able to fly nowadays. And they've actually, anytime there's been naturally occurring multiples, or even non-naturally occurring multiples, because of course we have things like IVF and that can produce multiple children, they would actually actively reach out to the parents and write letters and say, look, do not let anyone, yourselves included, exploit your children. They would try and protest and be proactive in terms of lobbying for the protection of these children.
Yeah, that's just no. Well, happy birthday, Annette, and who's the other one?
Annette and Cecile.
Cecile, happy 91st. Hopefully the government buys you a birthday cake.
You would hope they would buy you something. But yeah, what an amazing life to live. Like, very intriguing. But you just hope after 18 on that they just, had all the happiness in the world that they didn't get as children.
Hopefully. I hope they did. Speaking of happy, on May 30th, 1911, the International 500-mile sweepstakes race was held at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway. This, of course, is now known simply as the Indianapolis 500, and the inaugural race was won by Ray Harone. How long do you think it took him? Now, mind you, we're talking 1911 here. Okay, so
1911. I am so not a sports person and so not a math person.
Okay,
like, so what's the average length now?
Okay, so the Indianapolis Motor Speedway is 2.5 miles around.
So I have to convert that. Okay.
Sorry, 5 kilometers ish. whatever. Okay. So it's about 2.5 miles, and the cars go about 225, 227 mile an hour average on a lap. So they could do a lap in, 45 seconds, less than that. It
Holy
takes
moly.
on a typical Indy 500 about maybe 2 hours and 45 minutes or so to run the race currently.
Okay. Currently.
Yes.
Okay, so 1911, I have to go back to the kinds of cars. But this is tricky because we have learned about certain cars breaking certain speed records that early in history.
Not quite this early. Remember, you've got to go distance. This isn't just speed.
Speed, okay.
This is more
And
about
things break down and you have your pit crew.
at the time you would have riding mechanics that would ride along with the driver in the car.
What, in a horse?
No, in the car. They'd have
okay.
a second person in the car with them.
Okay. Oh, goodness. I'm going to get it so wrong. I'm going to say 4 hours, 15 minutes.
6 hours, 42 minutes, and 8 seconds.
Oh, no. That's a long race.
With an average speed of 74.6 miles an hour.
Still like pretty fast, though, for that time period.
For that time? Yeah. I mean, just to have a car going. Yeah.
That's like 110 kilometers. No, wait, so you're saying 70 miles?
74.6 miles an hour. So it's 120 kilometers an hour.
Yeah, that's pretty fast. That's like the speed limit on our major highway here between Minton and Calgary.
Yeah, that would be, depending on what highway you're on here. Yeah, you could get away doing that, especially if you're kind of getting the +5 rule.
Yes.
Yeah, nobody's around.
Nobody's around.
Andy, don't listen to me talking about speeding. Okay.
Andy always says it's whatever the speed limit. So if your speed limit is like 50 kilometers an hour, then you can go like 55 without getting pulled over.
Yeah, that's kind of generally the rule here. I mean, there are some places where it's going to be a little more like, a little stricter, but for the most part.
You don't speed and I don't speed, right?
No.
Wink, wink.
I could finish the Indy 500 in 2 hours. Anyway.
I'm a rule-following citizen. Okay.
The track is known as the Brickyard. Do you know why it is known as the Brickyard?
I'm going to eat. Okay. Is the track made of like cobblestone? Because that's going to be real awful on your machine.
When the track originally opened in 1909, it was composed of crushed stone and tar, but this quickly did not hold up. It caused a lot of accidents. So in the fall of 1909, the track was paved in brick. Over 3.2 million bricks were laid to form the track surface. They did this in just over 2 months.
But how bumpy is that ride going to be?
Well, it was quite bumpy. Beginning in the 30s, they began to pave over it, and by the late 1950s, only a portion of the front stretch remained brick. Following the 1961 race, the entire track, with the exception of 1 yard of bricks at the start-finish line, is paved.
Oh, so that's why they have that little pattern at the start and end. Okay.
So
a little homage to the origins. I love it.
Yes, so it is.
But, oh gosh, 6 hours on cobblestone. Oh my goodness.
That would be a
your
long.
Your poor brain and your poor butt.
I was going to say I'd be more worried about my butt than I would at that point.
One thing in your head is like, vibrating from going over all these bricks.
Yeah, if you think though 6 hours and 40 minutes in a 500-mile race is a long day, have you ever heard of drivers doing double duty?
Double duty?
So typically the race was always on Memorial Day, as Memorial Day used to shift. It was always May 30th, so it was kind of like Christmas. It's whatever May 30th is. In the 60s, the government here set a Uniform Monday Holiday Act. So that's why we have a lot of our holidays on Mondays now.
Right.
So Memorial Day is always the last Monday in May. And so the races ran on the Sunday before. So that Sunday, you typically have the Indianapolis 500. NASCAR runs the Coca-Cola 600 in Charlotte, and Formula One runs the Monaco Grand Prix in Monaco over in Europe.
It's a big racing weekend for racing fans.
Weekend, right? Okay. So now this year, the Monaco Grand Prix was last weekend, because sometimes with the calendar, it just doesn't quite work out that way, but typically. But what you do have, starting in the early 90s, they installed lights at the Charlotte Motor Speedway.
Okay.
So this in it, because used to the races back when the Indy 500 was ran on Memorial Day itself, you in the 60s and 70s, you'd get some crossover. You'd have some guys try to do both races, but once
That would
they
be
started,
exhausting.
it would be. But once the races were on the same day, they were running at the same time. You couldn't do it.
Mhm.
But then when NASCAR installed lights at the Charlotte Motor Speedway, the Coca-Cola 600 became a night race. So now it became
Oh.
plausible. And so in 1994, John Andretti became the first driver to attempt to do both races in the same day. He finished 10th at Indianapolis, and he wound up finishing 36th in the Coca-Cola 600, which is a 600-mile race. He had a blown engine a little over halfway through. So
That's a long day.
yes.
So the moral of the story is, ladies and gentlemen, make sure that you get rest and don't overexert yourself.
Yes. So
was it the same car in both races? Because maybe
no.
also don't overexert your, or is it different kinds of cars?
No, it's
and
totally
different
cars.
Okay.
So Indy
See,
cars.
I'm such a noob.
No, you're good. So Indy cars are like those small little open wheel cars that you see.
Oh yeah.
Think of kind of like a go-kart track looking kind of a thing.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's an Indy car.
Okay.
And then a NASCAR stock car is
that's the one that's covered.
Correct. That's
right.
Yeah. Similar to your passenger car that you drive on a daily basis, kind of a thing. So the double has been attempted a few different times. The person who had the most success was Tony Stewart. He tried it twice, and in 2001, he finished 6th in the 500 and 3rd in the Coca-Cola 600. And he also, to this day, is the only person who has completed all 1,100 miles of both races.
That's really interesting.
Yeah.
Good on him. I would be exhausted. Like, can you imagine? No. And then how long does it take you to get between both races? Because so you're racing for like 2.5 hours, then you have to get to the other race and then race for another 2 hours, I'm assuming.
Yeah, so we actually have a timeline of Stewart's 2001 attempt at the double.
Okay.
So at 12 noon, for reference, all these times are going to be Eastern.
Right.
So just so we're clear.
I'll convert my brain.
Well, it just think linearly as I go through this. You're like, oh, that was an hour ago. Whatever. Okay. So 12 o'clock, the Indianapolis 500 starts. By 3:30, the race is over. He finishes 6th. 5 minutes later, he's on a golf cart from the pit area to the infield care center so they could check him, make sure he's okay. He's like, yep, I'm good. 10 minutes later, he's on a helicopter going to the regional airport in Indianapolis. At 4:08, his plane takes off from Indianapolis to head towards Charlotte. On the flight, he gets 2 bags of IV fluids, which I'll get back to that in a second, so he could rehydrate. That became, when he tried the double in 99, that became an issue for him. He got dehydrated when he got to.
So he learned from that.
Learned from that. He's like, I need more fluids. So it takes 55 minutes for him to fly from Indianapolis to Charlotte. So he lands at Concord Regional, changes into his changes his uniform, gets on a helicopter to take him to Charlotte Motor Speedway. He gets there at 5:20. The starting command to fire engines is at 5:37, and 5:45 the green flag drops, and that race is over at 10 o'clock, where he finishes 3rd.
Oh, it's like exhausting just hearing about the plan, let alone doing it.
And the logistics that you have to pull this off to make this work, you can't have rain delays. You can't, there's a ton of things. So one of the big questions has always been, what if somebody was to win the Indianapolis 500? Because there's a ton of media obligations and stuff that go with it. And it would be interesting to see what would happen one day if somebody was to win the Indianapolis 500.
And also be slated to run in the next race.
Right. The last time it was attempted was in 2014. Kurt Busch finished 6th at Indy and then went to the 600, which he normally is a NASCAR driver, and he finished 40th because his engine crapped out on him. But yeah, so the Indianapolis 500 first ran on May 30th, 1911.
Yeah, no, this all just sounds exhausting. I know people who really love car racing, and if you love it, you love it. And for me, I'm just like, okay, it's nice. I'll see you in 3 hours.
So here's a very fun, odd fact. The most common surname in the United States, so the most common last name, is Smith.
Right. I do know that fact.
John Smith. If you just want a generic name, well, it's because it's the most common. Of the over 775 drivers that have driven in an Indianapolis 500. How many of them do you think have been named Smith?
I'm going to say at least 20%.
Zero.
What, really? None?
Nobody with the last name Smith has ever driven in the Indianapolis 500.
That's so funny.
Several of them have attempted to make the race, but failed to qualify.
So if you are a racing fan, and your last name is Smith, do not think about naming your son John Smith. You're just going to jinx him.
Well, he's already jinxed if they're named Smith anyway.
Oh, just get a whole new name.
Yeah. Speaking of a whole new something, a whole new branch of media.
Ah, yes.
Started on June 1st, 1980, as the Cable News Network begins broadcasting. Now, the Cable News Network, of course, is more known commonly as CNN.
Back to our CNN 10.
So CNN 10 is a spinoff of CNN. So that's what you have there in Canada.
No, we have CNN, but CNN 10 is a 10-minute segment that CNN produces for students.
Ah, okay. Yeah. Okay. I got
it. And they shout out usually American schools all over the world, but occasionally, as long as you subscribe and say like where you're from and your school name, they could pick you. So in the year that we have been watching it at my school, I think they've picked 2 Canadian schools. So my kids actually have a song that they sing at the end of the episode where when they're disappointed that our school is not yet picked. And I'm like, guys, there's like 1 billion American schools. We're probably not going to get picked.
Hey, you never know.
You never know. We have a chance, but
we have a better chance than the quintuplets.
Very true. Yep.
Anyway, so at 6 p.m. Eastern Time on Sunday, June 1st, the CNN network began broadcasting. So the inaugural broadcast on the channel was like they had a CNN logo up, and then Ted Turner, the owner of the network, gave an introductory, welcome to CNN kind of thing. And then following the introduction, a pre-recorded video of the Star Spangled Banner, our national anthem, was played. Mm-hmm. And that tradition carries on anytime that a new Turner network begins operations. The first thing they play is the Star Spangled Banner. So not like every
little tradition.
Yeah, not like every day, but just whenever they have a new channel. Now, back in the day, it was not uncommon for when a lot of like local channels would sign off for the night before, like the infomercials would kick in or whatever. A lot of networks would actually play the national anthem, at 12 or 1 in the morning.
Ours, like CBC does that, or other Canadian channels. There was always this Canadian like little video with the anthem playing in the background. So it's pretty common. So
as the network continued to grow, they outgrew their original home, which was a little studio area they had up on Techwood Drive in Midtown Atlanta. So this isn't really far from where they wind up going. Okay. And in 1985, Turner purchased the Omni International Complex, which is this area in downtown. So like you at the time had the Omni, which was the big sports arena where the Atlanta Hawks would play, and you'd have, concerts, your big arena in your city.
Don't they have like Omni News? Because we would pick up that channel in Canada and the East Coast.
No, I think that's got to be something different altogether. I'm not familiar with that.
I was like, oh, that's a familiar name. I know.
So you had this complex, and then you have the Omni Hotel, both of which the Omni Arena has been demolished and rebuilt as the State Farm Arena now. But so you have the arena that's connected to what is now known as CNN Center, and then you have the Omni Hotel. So it's like I've literally stayed in the Omni Hotel. You walk through the CNN atrium food court to get to the arena. You don't even have to go outside.
Nice.
So that's
it's real hot in Atlanta, right?
It can be
nice to have these air conditioning passageways.
Yes, it can. So what's interesting though about the complex, so the building now where CNN's headquarters was originally a theme park.
Oh, that's super neat.
It gets better. So the entrance to the theme park would take you on this multi-story escalator, which is the longest freestanding escalator in the world. It's 196 feet long.
Oh my goodness.
So, and by freestanding, it's only supported at both ends. It's not. There's no columns. Under.
That would weird me out.
I've ridden it. It's kind of interesting, and in fact, the escalator is part of the structure of the building, so you can't even remove it.
So they built it in as like kind of almost a support system.
Correct. Yeah.
Oh my goodness.
So
Okay.
whenever you're in Atlanta and you go take the CNN tour, it's actually the first thing you do. Like after you buy your
Okay.
ticket, the tour guide's like, okay, we're going on a tour. So you go up this escalator and then you start your tour through the newsroom and so on and so forth.
That'd be pretty cool. I would still be really, I don't know, that kind of stuff weirds me out. So I would have to, pluck up my courage a little bit, I think.
It's not that bad.
No.
You could do it. So now quite a few episodes back, we have sort of teased that we were going to get to some very interesting fact about CNN.
We did tease that. Yep.
And I subsequently have sent you this, so you have seen this, so you know what I'm talking about now. The Turner Doomsday video, because it's a news network. So at the opening of the network, I mentioned they played, the national anthem. It was members of the U.S. Armed Forces bands playing the Star Spangled Banner. After they recorded that, Ted Turner had them to record a song in case the world ended. So
we've often talked about how in human history we haven't been prepared or proactive, but Ted Turner, proactive in this.
He is prepared. And so there is a video of the band playing the hymn Nearer My God to Thee. So this tape exists. It, of course, was recorded in 1980. So it's 4:3 video. It's been recorded on tape, but it is on YouTube. If you go on there and you search Turner Doomsday video, it is there. And there are instructions that upon confirmation that the world is ending, be it, an asteroid is about to hit Earth or whatever, you were to play this video. Because at the launch of the network, Turner said, barring satellite problems, we will not sign off until the world ends.
It's very strange to think about yourself if you put yourself in that perspective. Like if something ever did happen and you're just watching the news and that just pops on. Very much like an ode to Titanic. Because isn't that the rumor on Titanic was that was the last song that was played as the ship went down?
I believe so. Yeah.
Yeah. So how many people are now going to Google and give this video a bump on YouTube?
I'm going to say everybody that listens to our show probably. But
as soon as you told me, I went and checked it out because I was like, I have to see this for myself.
But no, Turner said that we'll be on and we'll cover it, meaning the end of the world live, and that will be our last event. We'll play the national anthem one time on the 1st of June, meaning, today when this network was launching. And when the world ends, we'll play Nearer My God Thee before we sign off.
Just nice little bookends.
Yeah.
The military band.
So
I hope I never, ever see that video on TV.
Yes, outside of the context of YouTube. Yes.
Outside of the context of YouTube. Yeah. Now, I know some households, there's always like a debate about which news network they watch. Growing up, my mom was very much like a CNN viewer. So we would have a lot of CNN on in our household, of course, with like CBC and our locals and things like that.
Yeah, well, especially up until really you get to the mid 90s, that's when you start getting the serious competition. That's when, at least here in America, networks like MSNBC start, Fox News Channel started in 96. So that's when you start getting competitions. And CNN did have a spinoff channel that started after a couple of years it was originally called CNN2, and then it eventually became Headline News.
Oh, yeah.
And now it's just known as HLN.
Mm-hmm.
And that channel originally was going to always be news, whereas CNN would maybe start doing some feature stuff. Yeah. And so, that over time, the visions the visions of the network have changed, but the networks are still around.
Yep. Still around and still trying to find competition.
Something that is not still around is a lot of archival footage and master tapes.
Which is a shame.
Yes.
Because I didn't actually know too much about this when you brought it up.
Yes. So on June 1st, this was quite a news story. June 1st, 2008, a fire breaks out on the back lot at Universal Studios in California. And it destroys not only some land, it destroys the King Kong encounter ride that they had out there, as well as a large archive of master tapes for music and film.
Which my historian heart, right, as a history lover and history teacher, is heartbreaking to hear.
Yes. And there's still to this day a lot of unknown status when it comes to some of these tapes, as we'll get to
On
in
like
a
what's
moment.
missing versus what's destroyed. Like some things can just be hidden away in the archives somewhere.
Correct. So the fire
Oh.
breaks out. A worker was using a blowtorch to warm shingles that they were applying while they were doing some renovating to a building. And he left before checking to make sure that everything was cool. Well, there was something that was still hot enough and it started a fire. It took him over 12 hours to put out this fire because it got out of control rather quickly because, June, it's hot.
Yeah.
It's dry.
Well, and if you think of the material that's likely in this area.
Correct. So the fire destroys about 3 acres of the back lot, including, like I said, the King Kong ride. And initially they claimed the fire destroyed about 40 to 50,000 archived digital video and film copies for different Universal movie and TV shows. So it's believed that the archive of like the movie Knocked Up, the NBC series Law and Order, Miami Vice, that these were all lost. Now, Universal president told the media that nothing irreplaceable was lost. So this was presumably just where they were keeping copies.
Okay.
That was
so nothing original?
That was the story at the time.
Uh-huh.
Well, in 2019, so we're talking 11 years later, the New York Times does a investigation into this, and they believe that as many as somewhere between 118 to 175,000 audio master tapes were destroyed.
Ooh, someone's got some explaining to do on that original.
So initially,
quote,
Universal Music Group disputed this and said no. And then, so there again, still to this day, has been a lot of back and forth as to what really has been destroyed in this fire. Was it original masters? Was this a backup? And this is where you get to have, good records and good detail. You have to know what is here because it's lost. So not only, it's believed that some of these tapes could have retained outtakes or alternate versions of recordings that may or may not have been backed up somewhere else. Randy Aronson, who was the manager of the vault at the time, he actually estimates as many as 500,000 individual recordings could have been lost in this. So, like, if you've got your master files, you could have notes in there with it. How you mix this, all that stuff is likely
it's so
lost.
much more than just the recording of it.
Right, because
all those extra details.
There are files,
and you think of all the work that goes into making these.
Oh yeah,
right, just gone. It makes me sick.
So in February of 2020, just before everything, last year, a court filing by the Universal Music Group confirmed that master tapes from at least 19 artists had been damaged or destroyed in the fire. Some of which include Bryan Adams, Sheryl Crow, Peter Frampton, Elton John, Nirvana.
Oh no.
Yeah.
Did they not, like, when you're thinking about how you house these things, I mean, I know it's thousands upon thousands upon thousands of records, but are they not located in a kind of fire resistant or fire
and that is
building?
As you
vault, like a literal vault?
And that's my thing. You would think that this stuff would be in some sort of fireproof either building or within fireproof safes within a building or something.
Yeah.
But
like what you can buy for your own house. Like you can buy those fire safes and you can put birth certificates or whatever you need in there just in case your house burns down.
Right. Well, the fact that here we are, some 13 years later, and we still don't know what exactly has been lost.
Only 19 confirmed out of, how many thousands, hundreds of thousands you said.
There are hundreds of artists. Like there's a list out there of people who are believed to have lost at least some. And that's not to say that, all Bryan Adams record masters have been lost. We just know that for sure, at least some stuff that he has recorded has been. So, yeah.
Oh, man. Oh, that poor guy who was just trying to do his job. This is where, it's so easy to just make one simple mistake and then that's it. Like you're then responsible.
If you're ever working with fire kids, don't play with fire, but make sure the fire is out.
Yep.
In fact, we've been having brush fires here in Florida the last week.
Oh,
Yeah.
us here too. There was a pretty big wildfire just I think west of the city in Parkland County.
Yeah, it's been so hot here this week. It's legitimately been like 94, 95, 96 degrees
It's
some
way
days.
too
This
hot.
like this is late summer heat that we're having. To be honest with you, it would not surprise me if we had more fires because there's no rain right now.
Yeah.
And it's kind of reminding me a lot of 1998, which was when we had a ton of fires down here in Florida. But
Which is not good. I mean, we did have a few good, we had 2 days of rain with had some snow, which was kind of funny because you're like, it's May, and we went from 20-ish degrees here, which is like 70 for you guys.
yeah,
And it was beautiful and nice and things were growing. And then we just had like a dump of snow. It's all melted, obviously by now. But that at least helps control our wildfires here.
yeah. Speaking of
Mm.
snow,
Speaking of snow and colds, we have our last segment for the episode. On May 29th, 1953, Sir Edmund Hillary and Tenzing Norgay are going to summit Mount Everest. They're going to reach the top. And there's always been kind of debate about whether Hillary made it to the top first, or obviously his Sherpa guide, Tenzing, did. And in the document, Tenzing himself says that Hillary went ahead of him and then he followed. So it's going to occur at 11:30 a.m. That they're going to reach the top of the summit of Mount Everest, which is 29,035 feet above sea level, the highest point on Earth. I think it grows something like half an inch a year. So every year, whoever's the next person to climb Mount Everest is the person who's climbed the
technically
tallest.
sets the record, right?
Yeah, because of the tectonic plates and all that jazz. The two are going to be part of a British expedition, and they're going to make their final assault on the summit after spending a fitful night at 27,900 feet. News of their achievement is going to break around the world a few days later on June 2nd, which was the day of Queen Elizabeth II's coronation. And so every citizen in the British Empire hailed it as a good omen for their country's future.
Well, I would say that was a good omen.
It's a good omen. But known by the Tibetans as Como Langwa, or mother goddess of the land, the English, because what else do the English do but go around and rename things, named the mountain after Sir George Everest, who's going to be a 19th century British surveyor of South Asia. The summit of Everest reaches 2/3 of the way through the air of the Earth's atmosphere. So you're about the cruising altitude of jet airliners. And oxygen's really low. Of course, temperatures are really cold, and weather is extremely unpredictable and dangerous. Now, they're not going to be the first people, obviously, to try and climb the mountain. The first recorded attempt to climb Everest is going to be made in 1921 by another British expedition, and they're going to try and make it to the top, but they're not going to be able to make it. This is before they start utilizing oxygen tanks to climb. And it's going to be this George Mallory is the one that's coined as like, why do you want to climb the mountain? And he says simply, because it's there. That's like a really famous quote about why anyone does anything. It's just there.
That works.
Yeah.
Why not?
There's going to be a few more attempts, but then of course World War II happens. Tibet closes its borders to foreigners, and it's not going to reopen the door until 1949. And of course, then 4 years later, after more climbs are resumed, Hillary and Norgay are going to reach the top. But were they really the first?
I'm going to say no. They're just the first ones we know about.
Yes, they are the first ones that we know about. There's always this mystery about the expedition that went just before them. The most famous is that the 1924 climb of course, George Mallory and Andrew Sandy Irving. And they climbed Mount Everest at a time when you didn't use the compressed air. And it was once it was introduced, it was new and controversial. And so
because it's an aid, it's an assist.
It's an aid. And also, they, if valves got stuck or how you use it and things like that. And yeah, like, are you actually a real climber if you need to use this supplement air? So they're going to be last seen going up the second step, which is about 28,140 to 28,300 feet. And people wonder if they actually made it to the top. But then there was a wicked storm that happened, and were they killed on the way back? Now, they did have a camera to record if they made it. Parts of their equipment have been found, but the camera's never been found. And so to this day, there are people that argue they are actually the first people to make it to the top of Everest, but it's attributed to Hillary.
Maybe the archive was at the Universal Studios.
and it's lost forever now. We don't know. Now, since their historic climb, numerous expeditions have been made on their way up to Everest summit. In 1960, a Chinese expedition is going to be the first to conquer the mountain from the Tibetan side. And in 1963, James Whittaker is going to become the first American. More than 300 climbers, though, have died attempting to make it to the summit of the mountain in the history of climbing Mount Everest.
Do you want to go climb it?
No. I don't even want to take the escalator at the CNN building.
Well,
No way I want to go climb Everest. I also don't as a Canadian, although I put up with the cold, I don't want to be necessarily putting myself in frigid temperatures and fingers and toes. No, thank you.
I don't blame you there.
Would it be your bucket list? You like the snow. Every time it snows here, you're like, oh, I love it.
Oh, I absolutely, I do love it, but I wouldn't want to go climb Mount Everest.
No,
I
see no point in being like, I'm the person who climbed, like I'm the king of the castle kind of deal. It's like, okay, great for you.
I mean, if it's your thing, hey, go for it. But
yeah, I'm going to go turn on Westworld now and, sit in my comfy chair.
Yeah, there you go. Well, speaking of comfy chairs, if you didn't make it to the end of this episode, I hope that your chair is not comfortable. In fact, I hope that a little spring in your cushion is like starting to poke through.
No, little Princess and the Pea action going on there. So uncomfortable.
But you made it to the end of this episode. I hope you're sitting like royalty, like Queen Victoria would on her throne.
Day, you're going to have the most plush throne on that day.
Yes, that you will.
As always, gang, if you have any questions, concerns, queries, or freakouts, you can reach us at The Time Machine with Trish and Mike at gmail.com, The Time Machine with Trish and Mike on Instagram. You throw it into the Google machine and you can find us on YouTube. Please hit subscribe and help us get legitimized up there on YouTube. Or you can reach us on Anchor and you can actually leave us a voice message about anything that you have heard on the show and we can include you.
Yes, and we'll see you back here next week, once again, on The Time Machine.